cheated on him because I was lonely, but his shocking reaction left me speechless. Hello, Reddit. Longtime lurker, but this is my first time posting. I honestly don't even know why I'm making this post, but I feel like I really, really need somewhere to rant. So, I guess, what better place than Reddit? Here I can rant to a ton of faceless strangers and hopefully get it all out of my system. Let's call my ex-husband Max because, well, I guess that's where we are now. Max and I were married for about 3 years, and honestly, things were great. In the beginning, it felt like we were a perfect match. We were in love. I thought that was all we needed, and for a while we were truly happy. At least that's what I convinced myself. It's funny how much a person can convince themselves that everything is okay when it's not. You get so comfortable in the routines of daily life. You wake up, you go through the motions, and you tell yourself that things are fine, that you're doing okay. But it's all a lie you've built for yourself, a bubble. And then out of nowhere, one little thing shifts, and suddenly that bubble pops. You're forced to take a good, hard look at where you are, and it hits you just how far off course you've drifted. That's where I am now, staring at the wreckage of what my life used to be, wondering how the hell I got here. Things were great, like I said before, in the beginning. Max and I were in love. We were partners in every sense of the word. We'd spend lazy Sundays on the couch, binge-watching shows and eating pizza. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. We shared dreams, made plans. I thought we had a future that nothing could shake. But then, life happened. It all started when Max had to step up. His father was retiring, which was a big deal. Max's dad had spent his entire life building a company from the ground up, and when he decided to step down as CEO, the next logical step was for Max to fill his shoes. It wasn't even a question of if Max would take over. It was expected. And Max, being the dedicated and determined man he is, stepped into those shoes without hesitation. But let me tell you, those shoes were big. They weren't just big, they were massive, heavy, and suffocating. Max had always been hardworking, but this was a different beast altogether. Overnight, his responsibilities quadrupled. The pressure was immense, and it changed everything. At first, I was proud of him. I mean, how could I not be? My husband was a freaking CEO. He was doing what so many people only dream of, carrying on his family's legacy, making a name for himself, proving that he was worthy of the title. I told myself that everything would be fine, but it wasn't. The job took over his life, completely swallowed him whole. Our lazy Sundays? Gone, like they'd never existed. Now, Sundays were just another workday for Max. He was always in meetings, always on calls, always hunched over his laptop late into the night. And when he finally did manage to drag himself home, he was completely spent. He wasn't just tired, he was drained. Physically, mentally, emotionally. It was like there was nothing left of him by the time he walked through the door. I'd try to talk to him about my day, or just share something funny I saw, and he'd nod or give me a distracted, "That's nice," but I could tell he wasn't really there. His mind was still at work. He'd kiss me on the forehead, mumble something about needing to wrap up a few more things, and then disappear into his home office until God knows when. At first, I tried to be understanding. I mean, how could I not be? He was doing something huge, stepping into a role that came with so much pressure. I told myself this was temporary. He told me the same thing, said it was just a phase and that things would settle down soon. And I wanted to believe him, so badly. I kept telling myself that he was doing this for us, for our future. I mean, we were supposed to be a team, right? If he was out there building a better life for us, then I just had to hold the fort at home and be patient. That's what a good partner does, isn't it? But patience only goes so far when you're feeling completely, utterly alone. At first, the loneliness was subtle. It was a quiet thing, like the faint hum of a fridge in the background. You know it's there, but you can ignore it. I didn't feel that bad in the beginning. I'd watch Max from across the room tapping furiously on his laptop and think to myself, I miss him. But I told myself it was fine. He was here, wasn't he? That had to count for something. But over time, that quiet hum turned into something louder, something heavier. I started feeling it all the time. It was this weird, aching sadness, like I was living with a stranger. He was there physically, sure, But emotionally, mentally, he might as well have been on the other side of the world. It's hard to describe, but it was like he was a ghost of the man I fell in love with. Does that even make sense? And slowly but surely, all the little things that made us us started disappearing. No more late night drives to grab ice cream when one of us couldn't sleep. No more staying up until 2 a.m., talking about everything and nothing. Even having dinner together at the same table was rare. Most nights, he ate late, or not at all, because he was just finishing up something for work. It felt like our lives were running on 2 separate tracks, side by side, but never actually meeting. It broke my heart. And the worst part? I didn't know how to bring it up without sounding like an absolute jerk. I mean, how do you look at someone who's clearly drowning in responsibilities and say, hey, I know you're overwhelmed, but can you, not be? Maybe make some time for me instead of the 300 emails you're answering? It felt selfish even to think it, let alone say it out loud. So I didn't. I kept my mouth shut and waited. And waited. I kept telling myself that this was temporary, that it was just a rough patch. I believed him when he said things would settle down eventually, that he just needed time to find his footing. I told myself that once he did, he'd come back to me, that we'd go back to the way we used to be. But months went by and nothing changed. If anything, it felt like things were getting worse. Max kept apologizing, over and over, telling me this was temporary, that he was just trying to get everything under control. Things will get better, he'd say. But when? When exactly were they going to get better? I was lonely, I was neglected, and honestly, I was starting to lose hope. That's when I ran into Rick. Yeah, let's call him Rick. Honestly, I should have seen the warning signs right from the start, because, looking back, this was always going to be a disaster waiting to happen. Rick was an old flame, someone I hadn't seen in years. We used to have this thing way back when. It never turned into anything serious, but there was definitely history there. So I'm out running errands one day and crazily I run into him. Rick. Turns out he had just moved back to town after being away for years. He was going through a divorce. Of course he was. Isn't that just the cherry on top of this mess? At first it was all innocent. He asked how I'd been. We caught up a little, and before I knew it, we exchanged numbers. Nothing crazy. But then we started texting. And texting turned into meeting up for coffee. Coffee turned into grabbing lunch. Lunch turned into dinner. You see where this is going, right? Rick and I were both lonely. He was fresh out of a marriage, trying to figure out what the hell his life looked like now, and I was sitting there feeling completely neglected and invisible in my own marriage. We were both in a bad place, and somehow that made it easy to bond. At first, we weren't doing anything wrong. Not really. We were just 2 people who needed someone to talk to, someone to make us feel seen. And Rick made me feel seen. We'd hang out and talk for hours about everything and nothing. He'd ask how I was doing and actually listen when I answered. He'd crack stupid jokes and make me laugh, which was something I hadn't done in what felt like forever. It felt good. Gosh, it felt so good. To have someone look at me like I mattered, like I wasn't just some afterthought in the story of their life. I know it sounds cliche, but with Rick, I didn't feel like a background character. With Rick, I felt like I was actually important to someone again. Rick gave me the attention I'd been starved for, and sure, deep down, I knew it was wrong. Of course I knew it was wrong, but like we all do when we don't want to face the truth, I convinced myself that it wasn't that bad, that it was harmless, that we were just 2 friends hanging out. But you know what? I knew better. I knew better. And I still let it happen. It was a mistake, or was it? God, I don't even know. Here's what happened. Max was out of town on another business trip. He had flown out that morning, a quick 3-day trip for meetings or whatever. I barely even remembered the details because by then it was just routine. He was always gone. I was alone. Again. That night I was feeling especially lonely. It wasn't just the usual, oh, he's not here kind of lonely. It was that gut-wrenching, heavy kind of lonely that just sits on your chest. So when Rick texted me, asking if I wanted to come over and hang out, I didn't think twice. I just went. I told myself it was no big deal. We'd just hang out, talk, maybe watch a movie, nothing crazy, nothing inappropriate. but deep down I think I already knew that was a lie. I showed up at his place and we cracked open a bottle of wine and started talking. About life, about his divorce, about Max, about everything and nothing. One glass turned into two turned into three. The wine flowed and so did the conversation. And then, I don't even know how to explain it. One minute we were sitting on the couch, laughing about something stupid, and the next, it happened. I wish I could say I don't remember how it started, but I do. I remember everything. We both knew exactly what we were doing. We both knew it was wrong, and still it happened. Of course, the guilt hit me immediately after. It was like a ton of bricks came crashing down on my head, knocking the air right out of me. I felt absolutely sick to my stomach, like I couldn't even bear to look at myself, let alone Rick. I regretted it instantly. I'm not even going to lie about that. The regret hit me like a freight train. I just sat there in Rick's living room, staring at the empty wine glasses on the table, replaying the whole thing in my mind, wondering how the hell I'd let it happen. How had I let things get so out of hand? How had I allowed myself to cross that line? I kept thinking, what the hell is wrong with me? The shame was unbearable. I couldn't stay there a second longer. I grabbed my things, barely mumbled a goodbye to Rick, and bolted out the door. The whole drive home, I couldn't stop shaking. Rick texted me later that night. I didn't even want to open the message, but I did. We talked briefly and agreed that it was a mistake, a huge mistake. We promised each other that we'd just pretend it never happened. Forget about it. Move on. Like it was some awful drunken lapse in judgment that didn't mean anything. But of course, that was easier said than done. What was I supposed to do? Tell Max? Was I supposed to sit him down and say, "Hey, honey, so while you were busting your ass on that business trip, I slept with someone else because I was feeling lonely"? God, no. I couldn't do that to him. Yes, I was lonely. Yes, I was struggling. But that didn't justify what I'd done. It wasn't an excuse to betray him like that. I knew that. I knew that. So I buried it. I buried it as deep as I could. I told myself that I'd made a terrible mistake, but it was over now. It was done. And the best thing I could do, the only thing I could do, was move forward and try to be a better wife. But guilt is funny like that. It doesn't just pack up and leave because you want it to. Oh no. Guilt is like that uninvited guest who overstays their welcome, sitting in the corner of your mind just festering. It's always there, whispering, poking, prodding, and as if the universe wanted to deliver the biggest, most ironic fuck you to me, Max came back from his business trip, literally 3 days after I cheated, and immediately suggested that we go on a vacation the following week if I could get time off. He said it would be a way for us to catch up, to reconnect, to rewind. He told me things were going to get better now, that he was going to make sure of it. And the worst part, he really, truly meant it. I sat there listening to him talk about booking a nice beachside resort, planning out activities, even mentioning how he'd already cleared his schedule, and all I could think was, what the hell is happening? Like, hello, universe? Is this a joke? Because it wasn't funny. At first I didn't believe it. I thought, sure, Max, sounds great, but let's see how long this enthusiasm lasts. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for some work crisis to pop up, for him to cancel the trip or suddenly get too busy. But no. Over the next few days leading up to the vacation, I noticed something. He was home more. Not a ton, but enough to notice. Enough for it to feel different. He was still working, but it seemed like he was slowly starting to dial it back. And then the day of the trip came. He had done everything. Planning, booking, packing. All I had to do was get time off work. The moment we checked into our room, I could feel the guilt clawing at me. I mean, yeah, I was excited. Who wouldn't be? Max was finally trying. He was making a genuine effort to repair what we had, and I could see it. I could feel it. And let me tell you, Max really did try. For the first few days, it was like I had my husband back. The man I married, the man who used to stay up late with me laughing about dumb things and who would go out of his way to make me feel loved. He barely touched his phone, didn't answer any work emails, and didn't even mention his job. He invested all his time into me. He listened when I talked, like really listened, Not the distracted nodding I'd gotten used to, but full on, tell me more, I want to understand, kind of listening. He asked me what I wanted to do and went along with it without a single complaint. We went snorkeling, took long walks on the beach, and even had one of those cheesy candlelit dinners that he used to roll his eyes at Dot. For a moment, it felt like we were back to being us. Of course, yes, I was feeling guilty. I felt extremely guilty. I had cheated, plain and simple, no sugarcoating it, no excuses that could magically make it okay. What I had done was wrong, period. It didn't matter that I had been feeling lonely. It didn't matter that I felt neglected. Those things didn't justify crossing that line. Cheating is wrong, plain and simple. And the part that kept gnawing at me, I never even talked to Max about how I was feeling. Like, not really. Sure, I'd drop little hints here and there, say stuff like, I miss us, or we should spend more time together. But I never actually sat him down and laid it all out. I never said, yo, Max, the thing is, I'm drowning here. I feel neglected, and it's killing me. Back then, I didn't do it because I didn't want to come across as selfish. I mean, I knew he was overwhelmed, and I convinced myself that bringing it up would just make things worse. But looking back now, I feel like maybe I should have done it. Maybe if I'd been honest, we could have fixed things before it all spiraled out of control. But I didn't. Instead, I bottled everything up. And when the pressure got too much, I made the worst mistake of my life. I cheated. No excuses, no justifications. I messed up, and I couldn't even blame anyone but myself. And the irony of it all? The absolute kick in the teeth? Max was now trying to fix things. Like, genuinely trying. It was almost like the universe was sitting back with a bowl of popcorn, just watching me squirm. The timing was so cruel it felt like a bad joke. I mean, there I was, sitting with the weight of what I'd done, and Max was suddenly pulling out all the stops to bring us back together. He was listening, putting in effort, planning vacations, spending time with me. All the things I'd been craving for months he was finally doing, and instead of feeling happy or relieved, I just felt trapped. Because no matter how hard he tried, I couldn't escape the guilt. It was like the universe wasn't just mocking me. It was holding up a mirror and forcing me to look at the person I'd become. And let me tell you, I hated what I saw. The day everything went to shit, like when everything finally fucking blew up in my face, I was just doing what I thought was normal. I wanted to go out and do some activity, something fun, you know? Max said he was tired and just wanted to stay in and sleep. Fair enough, right? I didn't mind. I figured he deserved the rest. So I went out, did my thing, wandered around for a bit, and took my time. In total, I must have been gone for about 3 hours, maybe a little more. No big deal. But when I got back, everything just felt off. The first red flag? The receptionist? Or concierge, or whatever you call the person at the front desk. As I was heading toward the elevator to go up to our room, she stopped me. She called out, "Excuse me," and handed me our room key card. And then she told me that Max had asked her to give this to me. I remember just standing there, staring at her for a second, like, huh? Why would Max leave the key card with her? He didn't mention going anywhere. I checked my phone immediately, scrolling through my messages. Nothing. No text, no call, nothing. I brushed it off at first. I told myself, okay, maybe he just popped out for something real quick. Like maybe he ran out to grab snacks or something and didn't want me to be locked out of the room. It was weird, sure, but not completely insane. So I took the card, thanked her, and headed up to our room. The elevator ride felt so long, though. I had this weird feeling in my chest, like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. By the time I got to the door and unlocked it, I was already feeling uneasy. At first, when I stepped inside, nothing seemed wrong. The room looked normal, quiet, just like it was when I left. I figured he'd just stepped out. But then I went to the wardrobe to grab something, and that's when I noticed it. His clothes, his side of the wardrobe was empty, completely empty. And then I turned and looked at the luggage rack. His suitcase, his big-ass suitcase that he brought for the trip, was gone. That's when the panic hit me. My heart was pounding, my stomach was churning. I was like, what the actual fuck is going on? I grabbed my phone and immediately started calling him. Of course, it didn't go through. Straight to voicemail. Again and again and again. I was trying to stay calm, telling myself, There has to be some explanation for this. But the more I looked around the room, the emptier it felt. It wasn't just his clothes. His toiletries were gone too. His shoes. Even the damn charger he kept plugged in by the nightstand was gone. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My hands were shaking as I kept redialing his number. Every time it went straight to voicemail, my anxiety spiked even more. Where the hell did he go? Why didn't he tell me? Why didn't he leave a note? I was completely fucking distraught, like my mind was racing, and I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had just happened. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe something had happened. Maybe he was just pissed off about something and would come around. But deep down, I knew. It was pretty obvious, wasn't it? He'd packed his stuff and he was gone. I couldn't sleep, not a wink. I just couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, the anxiety would hit again, and I'd have to open them, just staring at my phone, praying it would ring, hoping he'd text me or something. I was just stuck in an awful cycle of waiting and not knowing. Finally, the next day, he picked up, and when I heard his voice on the other end, honestly, it was like a wave of relief hit me. But then came the bombshell. He told me he had left. He'd left for good. He was home, and I was no longer a part of his life. The reason? He knew everything. He knew about what had happened, and it was over. I was in complete fucking shock, like my world just shattered into a million pieces. He wasn't even giving me a chance to explain, or even ask for forgiveness. He was done. He told me not to bother coming back because he'd be packing my things and taking them to my parents' place. Divorce papers were already being set up. Done. Over. I was a mess. I couldn't breathe. I just started crying. Crying on the phone, pleading with him, begging him to reconsider, to give us a chance to talk through things. This wasn't how I wanted it to end. I was begging him to listen to me, but he wouldn't. He just said everything he needed to say, and then he fucking hung up on me. For the rest of the day, I was just gone, like emotionally wrecked. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to go. I knew I had to get back home, that I needed to see him face to face and talk, try to fix this, but everything felt impossible. I tried to book a return flight, but then came the next blow. I couldn't find my fucking passport. Of course I couldn't. Why would anything go smoothly? I spent hours trying to track that damn thing down, but no luck. Eventually I had to file a police report for the lost passport, then figure out where the hell I could get an emergency travel document. It was a mess, and I wasn't getting any closer to fixing anything. And to add insult to injury, he went and fucking emptied the joint account. Took his share, sure, but then he took about 80% of the money. Like I get it's his money, but still, goddamn. I was left with barely anything, just a few $100. It was bad. So bad. I had to dip into what little was left just to handle the passport stuff and the flight. Honestly, everything just felt like one huge nightmare I couldn't escape. The more I tried to fix things, the worse it seemed to get. All I could do was sit there, stuck in this fucking mess of my own making. The day my parents called, I could barely hold myself together. They were in shock, totally blindsided by the fact that Mark had not only packed all my things, but had actually dropped them off at their house. He even told them everything. The whole damn thing about the cheating. And of course, my parents were devastated. They were disappointed, heartbroken, just completely blindsided. I mean, I could hear the disappointment in their voices, and I knew that they didn't even blame Mark for anything. They blamed me, and that I deserved it, right? I fucked everything up. So I finally get the chance to fly back home, and honestly, I thought maybe things could at least get a little bit better. Maybe we'd have a chance to talk. Maybe he'd listen. But no. When I tell you that he wasn't kidding about not wanting me back in the house, I mean it. I thought he was just saying shit in the heat of the moment, but when I got there, he was all serious. No single hesitation. He told me to get the hell out of his house. He wasn't even looking at me when he said it, just flat out told me to go to my parents' place, or anywhere, I guess. He didn't care. He even threatened to call the cops on me, like, what the hell? I was standing there in shock, not knowing whether to scream or break down right then and there. He said he'd already done me a favor by packing my stuff and taking it to my parents. Like that somehow made it all okay. He even said he wasn't joking about the divorce. He was done. Really done. I was fucking destroyed. I mean, honestly, I don't know how to explain the gut-wrenching feeling of it all. I was standing there, not even able to get a word out, just swallowing the weight of his words. I didn't know what to do, where to go. So, of course, I had to get another Uber, head straight to my parents' place, where I knew they would house me, but I would have to deal with their criticism. They were angry, and they were also very disappointed. I was crying so fucking hard. I couldn't breathe, couldn't stop. It felt like my whole world had come crashing down, and I had no idea how to pick up the pieces. Mark wasn't even willing to talk. He didn't want to hear me out, didn't want to fix things. It was over, and that was that. I wasn't allowed in the house, not even to talk about it. He had shut everything down, locked it up tight. I tried so fucking hard to fix things. Honestly, I threw everything I could think of at the wall, hoping something would stick. I suggested therapy, counseling, everything under the sun. I even told him I would share my location with him all the time, that I would keep my phone wide open, no secrets, nothing. But he wasn't having it, not even a little. The only thing he was interested in was divorce. That's it, nothing else. He made it crystal clear. There was no coming back from what I had done, and honestly, it stung like a bitch, but I knew deep down I deserved it. I had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. Then, like I fucking knew would happen, it didn't take him long. About a week later, I get served the divorce papers. It was like a punch to the gut, like it was all becoming real. Before that, I kept telling myself there was a chance that maybe he'd have a change of heart. But when those papers landed in my hands, I couldn't deny it anymore. It was done. It was really fucking done. I couldn't even describe how bad that time was. I was a wreck. I was distraught. I didn't know who the fuck I was anymore. I was just moving through the motions like a damn zombie. I couldn't feel anything except that crushing weight of regret. I couldn't stop thinking about how I ruined everything. My marriage, my relationship, my future. And for what? For a stupid mistake? It didn't help that my parents were just as disappointed in me as Max was. They were pissed, and it made everything worse. They didn't get it. They couldn't understand why I did what I did. They just saw it as me throwing away something perfect for nothing. I knew they were trying to support me, but it didn't feel like support. It just felt like a reminder of how badly I fucked up. And then, to make it worse, all our mutual friends took his side. It was like they didn't even want to hear my side, and I don't blame them. I didn't deserve their sympathy. Even Rick, who was literally going through his own divorce at the time, ended up getting back with his ex-wife. Like, what the fuck? How the hell does that even happen? Here I was, at my lowest, and somehow everyone else was finding a way to move on and fix things. Meanwhile, I was just stuck, alone. It was so fucking lonely. I'm still alone. Every day it's still like this hole just keeps getting deeper. I've never felt more isolated in my life, and no matter how much time passes, it doesn't get easier. The pain just stays, like a weight that never fucking lifts. Once the divorce got finalized, that was it. The final nail in the coffin. I had been hoping for something, anything really, but I got absolutely nothing. No alimony, no split of assets, nothing. Apparently, I didn't qualify for any of it. We didn't really have any shared marital assets to split. It was mostly all premarital stuff, so I was left with nothing. And let me tell you, that hurt like a bitch. I didn't even get to walk away with something to show for all the years we spent together. It was like everything I had ever worked for, everything I thought I had, just vanished in an instant. I'll never forgive myself for what I did. Never. Every time I look in the mirror, it's like a constant reminder of how much I fucked up. I don't even know how to begin healing from it. It's been months, and I still can't get over it. Maybe I never will. How do you just move on from destroying the one thing you wanted most in this world? I loved him. I still love him. He was the person I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And now, because of one stupid, selfish mistake, it's all gone. It's hard to put into words how much I hate myself for it. My social life, it's non-existent. My friends, what few I had, dropped off. No one really checked in. No one cared enough to ask me how I was doing, what happened, how things fell apart. It's like everyone just assumed I deserved it, and hell, maybe I do. But that doesn't make it hurt any less. I'm paying rent to my parents now because I can barely scrape by on my own. I'm not earning enough to make ends meet. It's crazy how fast everything changed, how quickly I went from having a life to just existing. I have been job searching, but the market is so bad and oversaturated. Meanwhile, he seems fine, like better than fine. He's out there living his best life, looking happier than I've ever seen him. And just recently, he even got a girlfriend. It's like a slap in the face. He's moving on, and I'm stuck in this pit of self-loathing, barely able to function. Every day feels like I'm sinking deeper into this mess I created. I'm struggling. I'm drowning. And all I can do is watch as he thrives without me. I don't even know why I'm posting this, to be honest. I guess it's because no one's really asked me what happened. How did I get here? What went wrong? No one sat me down and really cared enough to listen. So here I am, ranting into the void, spilling my guts to a bunch of strangers who don't know me from Adam. But honestly, that's kind of comforting in a weird way. It's not like anyone here can judge me any harder than I've already judged myself. Maybe I just needed to get this all off my chest, even if it's to a bunch of faceless people on the internet.